first part is to be autonomous and self-motivated. You can be given a task and you will execute it on your own. So you don't have this strong desire to have somebody holding your hand in a process. In Denmark, we say, here's a person you can send to town. That means you can give this person a complicated challenge, and the person will go out and find his own way or her own way and solve it. And you just need a lot of that in entrepreneurships, because you do not have time for a lot of people management. You want people to be able to go out and solve complicated tasks on their own. There's a whole group of characteristics that I think are that are typical of many entrepreneurs, and that is they are innovative, they're curious, and they're inventive. Probably you know from some children that they need to see what happens if they put their fingers into this hot thing, or they press this button, or they walk out this dangerous place or so. Some of these totally irresponsible children can become very great entrepreneurs. They have this inborn curiosity. They want to see what happens if I do this, or they want to know what is behind that, or what is the reason for that. They ask questions like crazy when they're small, but they keep asking questions when they're adults. And asking questions is how you find out new stuff. If you read stories about famous entrepreneurs like Richard Branson and so on, you find that typically already when they were in school, they started things. They took new initiative. Maybe they made a school magazine, they made new clubs and so on. They always had the initiative to start things. And these kind of people, they tend to have in their mind that they always think about how you can change stuff. So you want to have the people in a startup that take pleasure in changing stuff. It has to be in their mindset, the way they are. There's something that really bores me, and that's process people. So some people are very, very focused on the process. They like the process. Other people that are focused on the result. And the people who are focused on the result will automatically work very fast. And I think actually one of the reasons that some people are fast is that it's the result they want. Sometimes you see somebody do a very simple task, and you look at them and you think, how can they do it so slowly? They just do it incredibly slowly. If you want to do a startup, you have to have the ability to do tasks like this, like with a machine gun. So the daily life in entrepreneurships is very often you just have so many problems. You have like 120 problems you have to solve today. And you better do it because tomorrow there'll be 120 other problems you have to solve. And some people can do that very, very quickly and others can't. It has to be in your personality to be really fast. I think to be diligent is very important. To be diligent means that it's important for your self-image that you do what you do well. An example is some entrepreneurs I know, they had jobs, let's say in McDonald's or something else when they were students, and they didn't think that that was the career path for them. But they were still diligent. It was important for them to do those jobs well, and to. You can be diligent because you have to, but if it's your personality, you want to be diligent because you feel I should do, because it's part of your self-image to be diligent, then you're far more likely to be a good entrepreneur. I've once seen Shackleton described as one of the greatest entrepreneurs of all time. He was not a typical entrepreneur. He raised money to make an expedition to the South Pole and sail out in 1914. And the ship got caught in the ice and got destroyed by the ice. And then they made it back in an incredible venture. It took a long, long time. So they made it back in rowing boats. The book is called Endurance, the boat is called Endurance, the movie is called Endurance, and people say Shackleton was one of the greatest entrepreneurs ever because he had this endurance. So no matter what happened to him, he would always persist, and he would always motivate the people around him to persist. And because entrepreneurship in most cases run into a lot of bad stuff, that to have the ability to just keep going on is very, very important. And that leads me to the next, which is to have a happy, optimistic personality. Episode from the book where there are a few people sailing in a tiny little boat, and they are in enormous waves, and every morning the boat is frozen over, about to sink. So they have this guy, they tie a string to his leg, and then he goes out and chops off the ice. And then this guy, he would say, "Oh, what a wonderful morning it is," even though they were so close to death, but he just enjoyed the sunshine. So that made him resilient, and that gave endurance, and that motivated people. So in a startup, you have to have these happy, enduring, resilient people who just keeps going with a smile. I've looked at studies of how entrepreneurs are different from the rest of the population when using the Myers-Briggs personality testing system. And one of the things that come out is that they are much more intuitive. Let me explain you with something that we all have heard, the expression that you can't see the forest for the trees. Some people cannot see the wholeness because they just see the details, but they don't aggregate it. This is called having a sensing personality. But to have an intuitive personality means that you're very good at seeing the whole concept of things. And it turns out that entrepreneurs are very good at seeing the whole concept to understand the whole meaning of a complex situation. So that is one characteristic that comes out of the Myers-Briggs test. The other one is that they are very, very good at adapting to new information. So whereas they might have a theory of where they're going, if data shows that they're going the wrong way, they have new data that shows you should probably rather go that way, they have no problem with that. They change with the data. And that's so important because data will change. You are going into the unknown, you have a theory of how it works. It doesn't work like that, it works somewhat different or entirely different. And then they have to be completely flexible. They have no problem that yesterday I said this, today I say something else because new data have changed my mind. They don't feel that this is embarrassing. No, they will just say, that's how it is, I changed my mind. Studies show that extroverts are more likely to be successful entrepreneurs than introverts. You can have introverts in entrepreneurships, but then they typically have at some point to involve some extroverts. And one of the reasons is that you have to sell. So you have to sell your idea. You have to sell the idea for people to invest in your company, the idea of people to use its products, the idea of this and that and the other. So extroverts are just better at that. So to be extrovert is good. The last thing I want to say is that several studies have found that a disproportionate part of entrepreneurs have some personality disorder or have close family members who have been diagnosed with personality disorder, which might be ADHD or bipolar or something else. You might think, why is that? Well, I think it is because these people are more likely to do unusual stuff. So they might not fit well into the school system or to a job or to having a boss, but they can be extremely good at some things. So they are quite likely to, partly because they don't fit in anywhere else, but also because they have some extreme capabilities, so they're quite likely to start companies. If they're too weird, too strange, then they might not be the ones who should stay in the CEO position for very long. But they're quite good at starting companies, and many of them had bad childhood, did not do well at school at all, but they do super well afterwards in life because they can use those peculiar tendencies in a constructive way.
Do you speak future?